David Brainerd. You can go and check out on him. David Brainerd. He died at the age of 29. He was one of the first missionaries that went to India. When he went to India, it was said that when he went there, because he couldn't speak their language, his only dependence was on prayer. He would pray in the forest, deep forest with wild animals. And the guy would give his whole life to prayer until he caught tuberculosis and pneumonia. This man would pray all day, all night. In fact, his first program he did, a drunkard was his interpreter. Because he knew he couldn't trust the drunkard, he prayed all day. When the drunkard began to translate, they were hearing his words as a spirit. And after he was done in that meeting, there was an outpour of the Holy Spirit, and the whole place was filled with the glory of God, and they started giving their life to Christ. There were wicked people in India that wanted to kill him. So they were told that this man, that skinny man, has entered into the town and is in the forest. So they went there with clubs to go and kill him. When they opened his small heart, they saw him on his knees, groaning in the spirit and praying for their salvation. And something surprising happened. They saw a very venomous serpent that was coiling close to him whilst he was praying. The guy was so much deeply rooted in his prayer that he didn't even know a serpent was there. He didn't even know enemies had come to kill him. He was praying, and the venomous serpent rose up and looked at him face to face, got close to his lips, and the serpent went back and ran away. When they saw that for that serpent to look at you and run, it must be God, and they began to call him God. That evening when he did the program, all of them gave their life to Christ. Hey, in fact, one time it was snowing, and this man prayed so much in the snow that he began to sweat in snow, and his sweat melted all the snow on his body. How do you pray in snow and sweat? That means your prayer must be that intense and powerful. You know his last prayer before he died? He died at the age of 29. He said, I long to be a flame of fire, continually glowing in the service and building up of Christ's kingdom to my last and dying breath. His prayer was answered. Today, his diary is what is speaking for him today. John Wesley read his diary. William Carey read his diary. And today, there was a man that read his diary and went into missionary work because of the zeal of his prayer life. Time won't permit me to speak about the Moravian brothers. These were men who condemned themselves to intercession and missions. They went into a cave and they hid there. For 24 hours a day, they were in prayer. They ran in prayer shifts. They prayed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for over 100 years. They were the ones who bet almost all the revival we are hearing today. It was their prayer that bet it. 24 hours a day for 100 years. A man called Leonard Ravenhill. That man prayed 14 hours a day. In fact, it was said of him that when you are having a conversation with him, he can look at you and ignore you and go back to go and pray without apologizing. This is a man that said, eat little, sleep little, and pray more. That was his motto. There was a man called Praying Height. One great man of prayer. This is a man who prayed. He spent his entire life in prayer. He prayed until his heart shifted from the left to the right. They went for a checkup at the hospital. They told him the only way you can come back is when you become silent for about 4 years. He looked at the doctor and said, okay, thank you. When he left, he went back to go and pray. He prayed until the heart shifted back again. This was a man who spent whole day groaning for the salvation of souls. It got to a time he prayed for one soul a day. So he says, Lord, give me one soul today. He goes to minister and the soul comes. For 1 full year, 365 days, he won one soul every single day. The next year, he said, Lord, give me 2. The whole 365, he won 2 souls every single day. The next year, he said 3. The next year, he said 4. So he was winning 4 souls a day. And now he started doing crusades. One time, he returned from India back to US. There was a preacher who was doing a program. The preacher did a program. Many people didn't show up in the program. And they invited him. He went to pray and he came to the meeting. The glory of God was so much on him that people didn't even know. But the glory attracted people. And that day, when Praying Height entered the meeting, the whole room was filled. And many people gave their life to Christ. What is your presence doing in the spiritual realm? His presence brought new souls to be saved. Why? Because of prayer. Because of prayer. There was a time in one of the meetings in India, the man prayed to the extent that he just lifted his voice weeping and he says, oh Heavenly Father. That was the only word he said. The glory of God rushed in the whole building and that whole place became a place of revival. That's Praying Height. There's a great man called Zacharias Tanifomu. This man is an African, so I'm proud to talk about him. This man was a man who was giving to prayer. In fact, he spent 16 hours with God. This was a man who said, if you're a preacher, you preach 1 hour, you are not worthy of your calling. He says 1 hour prayer is for your personal survival as a Christian. If you have a wife, it is 1 hour 30 minutes. If you have children, it is 2 hours. If you want to do the real work of God, it starts from 3 hours. That was his criteria. He said if you're a minister, you don't pray 8 hours, you can't be called a full-time pastor. That was his criteria. This was a man who prayed until he became so Christ-like. You know how much he gave as tithe to God? 92.5%. His income, his royalties, his salary, he gave 92.5%. You know his prayer? His prayer was that before he dies, he wants to give 99.9% to God. This was a man who organized prayer retreats, prayer crusades. When we are doing crusade for salvation, he was doing prayer crusades between 7 to 40 days. Anytime they meet, it was prayer. They do prayer stages. You know prayer stage? They organize a prayer meeting from between 24 hours to 100 hours non-stop, and he was the one leading it. He prayed until Jesus appeared to him and said, you have been promoted. I am taking you to 50 nations. Listen, when you pray, God will promote you. As I speak to you now, they are in over 150 countries. His daughter is called Ruth. The man was also a fasting machine. I met the daughter some months ago. I was told that the daughter was around, so I went to visit the daughter. The daughter this year has done her 60th 40-day fast. Are you listening to me? 60th 40 days fast on water. And when I met this woman, the holiness and the aura around her, I couldn't talk. I went to sow a seed into her life. When I sowed the seed into her life on behalf of her dead father, after she received the seed, she was apologizing to God that I have thought of her more highly than she ought to be. And she spent 15 minutes apologizing to Jesus. I was feeling like a fish out of the sea. I went to a Patriachs, full of holiness. They've done one meeting in India. They gathered 600,000 crowds. 600,000. How are they doing it? They are doing it by prayer. She said she's going to bring me to Cameroon next year, hopefully. In Cameroon, 14-year-old children are fasting 21 days on water. 18 years are fasting 40 days. Some are doing their 6th, some are doing their 7th. And you are doing your you are doing your 6 to 2. Even that one with many afflictions. Telling the Lord 1:30 p.m. There was a man called Father Nash, who was one of the greatest intercessors for Charles Finney. This man was, in fact, he was a pastor of a church, and they voted against him because they thought he was an old man, and he developed an eye problem, so he couldn't preach again, and he gave the rest of his life to prayer. So he submitted himself to Charles Finney, who was a younger preacher by then. So what happens is that 3 weeks before Charles Finney enters the town, he will enter there, use his own money to pay for a lodging place. There was one time he didn't get a place. He took a woman's garage, paid 25 cents, stayed there for 3 days. He stayed there for 2 weeks, groaning in the spirit. Souls, souls, that same way. In fact, one old lady saw Charles Finney when he entered. He says, there is a man in my garage. He has been on the floor for days in the same position. Come and check if everything is okay with him. And Charles Finney said, that man carries the spirit of supplication. He will groan in the spirit. Do you know that in Charles Finney's meeting, because of the intercession of Father Nash, they won 100,000 souls per day. Per day, 100,000 souls. It was believed that all the souls they won, 98% of them never backslid because of the power of this man's prayer. He had a friend called Abel Clary, who was also an intercessor, who learned to groan and to pray. Why am I sharing these things with you? Because you need to see these men of history to ignite. It was men of history that ignited me. That's what I'm telling you. He will groan for many days at one place. He doesn't move, praying. It was said of Abel Clary that there were times he would groan for 3 days non-stop. And when he gets up, he can't walk again. Then he will lie down on the floor again and continue praying. One time they went for a program and they came for lunch and they told him to give opening prayer. He looked at the food like that. He says, I can't be here. I can't be here. I can't be here. You can't be here. I can't be here. And then he pushed the food away and he entered the room and started groaning for souls. Lord, save more, save more. And his brother went to the room. He was shocked. He says, call me Charles Finney. When Charles Finney came, he says, Charles, pray. And Charles Finney started praying. After some time, Charles realized that he couldn't stand it and he left it. And he came to eat. He died at the age of 37. And see, you'll be shocked. These people, we never saw them in the limelight. But when we get to heaven, all the 100,000 souls Charles Finney was winning per day, they are going to be charged into his account also. You know the amazing thing? The amazing thing is that these people are men like you and I. They were busy like you and I, but they gave themselves to prayer. I read